Hey TDA and welcome back to Satisfactory. This is my bite-sized run, which is aimed at those of you who want to progress through this game without every build taking weeks to complete, but still have an awesome looking factory. And you see our latest bite in front of us, which is a facility making both rubber and plastic, currently powered with a manual biofuel system, and of course that's not going to cut it for very long. I do think it's very important to get that up and running, because you actually do need a decent amount of plastic and rubber to actually be able to progress further on. But as soon as you have that, you kind of don't need it for a little while, because the next target after that is going to be the production of computers as well as heavy modular frames. And apparently I can't bring up the codex while I'm in a vehicle, so let's do that like this. If we look at the recipe for heavy modular frames, we basically need a lot of everything, and the computers are even worse. They need circuit boards and all kinds of stuff. In other words, we are going to need to upgrade our entire production system by quite a lot. That's going to require power, and it's actually going to require a lot of stuff before we can at least elegantly unlock a new type of power. So I think the next part of our build should be another upgrade to our power system. So let's see if we can make that interesting. And when we say power when it comes to this stage of the game, it's almost inevitable that we'll get over here near this little lake on the map, where there are 4 coal nodes very close together, right next to the water, which we'll also need for the coal power. And we are going to make another coal facility. Now, honestly, it's a little bit boring to build another coal facility, so let's see if we can make it, in terms of layout, make it look a bit more interesting than the last one, and just get it over with, because this is the last time we're actually going to rely on coal power. From the future onwards, we want to rely on more efficient ways of actually getting power. But in order to get there, we're going to have to unlock a few more things. So let's see if we can make a nice little layout for a basic power facility that's both easy to construct as well as nice looking. So, since the blueprint designer doesn't actually fit the coal power plant, or it doesn't fit in there, that's just what I should be saying, we'll have to build the entire thing by hand. So old school style power plant construction. I'm going for a bit of a simple layout initially, and then we can kind of dress it up once we have it finished. And if you don't want to spend that time dressing up your power facility, then you can just stop whenever you're done actually making it functional. The basic layout I'm going for here is something centered in this nice body of water. It just makes it convenient to build in. We actually need the water, so it makes sense to have it in the water. And we're going to have a total of 16 coal plants, so we don't have to ever look after power again. But we're not overdoing it in terms of the amount of production we have. We're also going to fit in a balancing system for our power, as one of you actually asked for in the comments, which I think is actually a very good idea at this point in the game. So what I'm going for is a simple layout with 2 rows of 8 power plants, and we're going to have a supply system running down the middle. Now, because we have that whole thing with the pipes going on, I do actually want to get it right this time around and make sure we don't have those power plants turning on and off once again. Hopefully, I sometimes actually do learn from my mistakes. And that means we also need to think about where we are going to fit in the water pumps. Now, I actually want to have 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and then 2 feeding in a belt from the middle of the facility. Well, not a belt, a pipe. And I think that should solve most of our in and outflow problems. And we're also going to make sure the entire system is circular, just to make sure it doesn't clog up somewhere. Now, in order to do that, we're going to make 2 rows of 4 on each side first, and we're going to leave an open end, and then at the end we're going to have another 2 rows of 4 of these plants. And then we're going to have to fiddle around a little bit with the actual piping and the belts. Now, the nice thing about the belts is, because we now have Mark III belts, we can simply have one going down the middle supplying all of these coal power plants, so that's very convenient. The piping, we do need at least 2 lines of piping in order to make sure we can fit everything, all the water everywhere, so that's going to take up most of the room. But I think I have a pretty decent layout for that. So let me build a little bit and show you. Now, as a side note, when you're trying to construct a facility and then you find out that you're missing half your materials, like I just did, how I recommend that you are efficient about that is stick as much of your inventory as you can inside the vehicle that you're using to transport your stuff around, so you have a lot of inventory space to work with. You could actually place down a storage unit to fit in even more stuff, and then take a secondary vehicle like I have over there, stick that full of all these stuff that you want to transport back to your base. So things like leaves, slugs, etc. Like I have over here, I have some rare ores as well. And then basically drive this back, empty it, fill it up, and drive this to your construction site. Now then you will have 2 vehicles full of construction materials. You have your inventory full of construction materials, and by doing so you're basically stockpiling a little bit at each main site that you're constructing something. And once you're done, you can either bring all of that next to the next site, or you can simply leave it behind, maybe in the storage unit or something like that, and then you have these little stockpiles of materials all over the place, basically preventing you to have to run all the way across the map back to your main hub. Hopefully, if some of those stockpiles have the items that you need. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. That's just how I tried to do it in this particular playthrough, especially since we don't really have a centralized location just yet, or an easy way to get there. Experimental branch, what did you do to my tractors? Did you break them? This is not supposed to happen. Oh boy, something broke in the patch, I think. I'm just gonna assume that this will fix itself in a few days from now once we get another update, because I can't actually get the tractors to work anymore. It has nothing to do with like actual tractors. It must be something on the experimental branch, which again just shows that experimental is definitely experimental and things will break down at some point. But yeah, be warned if you join me on the update 7 branch. And there we go, we have 2 pumps in the front, then we have 2 rows of 4 coal power plants, then we have 2 more of these, then we have 4 more, and then we have 2 more pumps for a total of 6 pumps and 16 power facilities. Now I really like how the pumps kind of level out when you build the foundations at water level, or slightly above water level actually. The water pumps actually need 3 foundations of space in order to neatly fit into the rest of the build, so take that into account if you're building something similar. And now all we need to do is place down a lot of piping and a belt with coal as well, so I'm gonna go and get to that. Now, if you use the layout like I've done over here, it's actually pretty straightforward to build the piping in such a way that it doesn't conflict. So well, there's actually 3 connections here. You typically only need 1. Well, you technically don't need any, but I just like the looks of it. But you do need 2 separate lines of piping, 1 for each side, and then of course, because we've spread out the pumps, there should not be a problem with the flow. Now, in order to get the coal where it needs to go, we'll use the center over here and have a stack of 3 mergers on top of each other, all facing in the same direction. And of course, we only need the top row because the lift is actually exactly 3 stacked mergers high. So what we can do is we can actually take this out and do that all along the way. And there you go. Once you finished removing all the additional mergers that you don't actually need, you connect everything up with some belts. Make sure it's Mark 3 belts, at least in the center belt, because you will need the total throughput of 240 coal per minute. The side belts and lifts can be Mark 1 or Mark 2s, whatever you want. I just went the easy way and just made everything Mark 3 because I had a little steel on me. And of course you also need to connect everything up to power. Don't forget to actually connect the power pumps as well. And then everything should be good to go. Just one little problem: in order for this to actually generate any power, you're going to need to supply power first. This is where blueprints like the one we used last time come in. It's really convenient just to place down something like this, just a biomass burner facility like that. Just throw some leaves in there, connect it to the power, and then remove it once again. But if you don't have the blueprints, of course, just build a couple of these. These are definitely not going to be refilled ever. We don't want to do anything with manual power, especially not in this region specifically. So just hook it up, make sure everything gets going, and then remove it once it's self-sufficient. Now, before I forget, you're actually going to need to overclock that single node or connect 2 different nodes, so that's kind of a waste. You're going to need to overclock it to 200%, and if you need a power slug for that, there is one in the cave behind the waterfall. But more importantly, what's also behind the cave, or behind the waterfall, is this Deep Rock Galactic Boombox Tape. So it's a reference to the other game, Deep Rock Galactic, that you might be familiar with, apparently. It's very hard to pronounce for me. It's a cave. There doesn't seem to be anything hostile in that cave, so it's kind of nice to explore. And, well, if you're here, you might as well pick that up. Since we haven't actually overclocked anything in this particular playthrough, just in case you're not familiar with it, what you want to do is you want to craft at least one or two of these power shards. You can make them from slugs, so the blue slugs give you 1, and the yellow slugs give you 2, and I believe the purple slugs give you 5. But you can craft them simply in the crafting bench, and they should be somewhere down in the bottom over here. As you can see, you unlock that by putting in one of the slugs into the MAM. That gives you access to the associated power shard recipe, and then what you do is you simply plug these into the actual machine, and then you can scale it up to 150 if you have only one, but to 200% if you have two. Now this will cause it to actually consume a lot more power, so as you can see at 200% it's consuming 30 megawatts. If you put it at only 100% it's only going to take 12. So it's actually almost 3 times as much if you put it at twice the amount of production. But still, this is a lot more efficient use from your nodes, and of course there is a limited amount of nodes in the game. I just like being conservative with those. You could actually do the same thing with the pumps, although that is a little bit of a waste. You could scale the 2 pumps to 150 and then they produce the same as the 3 pumps, but because of the spread and the maximum throughput through the pipes, I don't recommend doing it with those. Just do it with the more rare nodes, like oil, for example, is a very good target for this. Something like coal, or basically anything that you don't have in abundance around. And there we go. I tore down the biofuel facility, and as you can see, it's now completely self-sufficient. As long as there's coal and water incoming, this should keep producing. And, well, as you can see, working like intended. I'm not entirely sure why this water pump just turned yellow there for a moment. I think the system is still trying to balance itself out, but it should be working at full speed all the time. I haven't found any indication that it's not, so that's good. Now let's see if we can kind of spice this up, because, well, as it is, it already looks very organized. But if you want, you can of course take it to the next level and just make it look a bit more interesting. Now, a very easy way to dress up a facility like this is just covering it in concrete. Now, the nice thing about coal facilities in particular is that they have these huge chimneys sticking out, and, well, of course the default building looks pretty nice as it is if you ask me, but you can just simply use the way the game allows you to clip by, in this way, making it kind of seem like these chimneys are actually built into the actual building. And if you leave some open ends on where the actual belts go in and pipes go in, it actually looks like you can still easily move around. You can actually move around if you go under the belt over here. You can actually still move around in your facility like this, and, well, it just makes it look more than just some random buildings plopped down in the middle. And if you leave some open spaces here and there, that actually looks very interesting from above as well, which happens to be very nice considering we will be looking at this building from above because of all the raised areas around here. So it's a very easy way to actually look very intentional with the way you are building without it costing a huge amount of time. I think I did all of this concrete in like 10 minutes or so at the most. It really took no time at all, and it still makes the building look a lot more sophisticated compared to just the rough outline that we had before. Now, last but not least, you might want to include some other details like wall sections, etc. Just go nuts and keep building until you get bored of it. And as you can see, I also went through a little bit of an extra stage where I built some power storage on top of the actual facility. Now, whether or not you want to make use of power storage is completely up to you. If you do, make sure you keep an eye on your power, because if you exceed your current power level, you won't notice until your power storage is completely empty, and at that point you might get into a situation where you need to reboot your entire system, which can be really annoying if you kept building for too long. At the same time, having power storage also makes it easier to kind of build a little bit further without having to instantly deal with power every time. and it also makes sure you are able to handle some spikes in your system a lot easier than if you don't have that. So again, it's completely up to you whether you use it or not. I just give you an option to take it into account if you want to. Now you're also going to need to connect this power facility up to the actual factory. Doing so with the main facilities that we have over here is pretty straightforward. Just draw a power line across this little ramp over here, for example, up here and then down there. When you are going to connect our plastic and rubber facility that we have over here, if you followed my build, then I recommend going up this ramp through these mountains and then to the beach over here, and then just follow the beach to the actual facility. The reason I suggest doing that is that we're also going to be building some facilities over here pretty soon, so that way you already have your power ready and good to go. And there we go, guys. This is the power facility that's definitely more bite-sized than the one I did in my previous playthrough, where I think it took me over 10 hours to build a massive power facility. This should only take you about 2 or 3 hours at the most. It's definitely bite-sized. You can do it in the evening and then not have to worry about power for a very long time. So I think that's very convenient. Let me know in the comments what you think of this build. Let me know what you think of my bite-sized run so far. And I definitely think you're awesome if you're still here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It definitely helps out the channel. And I hope to catch you in the next one.